Um, Thank you for coming to today's arts talk with Joseph Lazaro Rodriguez. My name is Clifford Everly, Exhibitions Associate at Hicks Art Center Gallery. Joseph's installation, I Become Bone 3.0, is currently on view in our exhibition Mediations, and which includes 7 contemporary artists confronting phenomenology, financial oppression, trauma, memory, privacy, cultural colonialism, tech access, and painting futurism in digital media installation, sculpture, and collage. We invite you to the opening reception at the gallery immediately following this talk. To introduce Joseph today, Joseph Lazaro Rodriguez is a multidisciplinary artist residing in Philadelphia. He uses his personal experiences to create paintings, drawings, sculptures, and large-scale multi-channel video installations. He has exhibited his work at Wasake Project in Wasake, New York, Anna Zarina Gallery in New York, Works on Paper Fine Arts Gallery in Philadelphia, and various other venues in the United States. He studied fine arts at Pratt Institute and attained his MFA from the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. And now, take it away, Joseph.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm
I'm
honored to be here.
honored to be here, and I'm grateful to be showing the piece in the Hicks Gallery.
Clifford said, my name is Joseph Lazaro
Rodriguez.
You can just call me Joe.
Just call me Joe.
And I'm a
And
multidisciplinary
I'm a multidisciplinary
artist.
artist.
I thought I was a painter.
But
then I went to grad school.
And
I was primarily painting and drawing for most of my life. And I'm also a nurse, and I have been practicing nursing. So I was painting and drawing,
and then
towards the later part of my nursing career, I was also doing performative acts. But that's what led me to go to follow up with my MFA. But in the meantime, for many years, I was a nurse in the cardiac units at Jefferson Hospital.
I worked in heart transplant.
As Clifford mentioned, I studied fine arts. But when I graduated, it was very hard to get a job.
I was working for 3 artists in New York City. I was like 20, and I was starving. My family was like, no way. So
they brought me back to Florida.
I ended up becoming a nurse because I thought it was going to be easy. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
But it has informed a lot of my
practice. And as you can see,
I spent most of my time
painting.
And
I would have these terrible shifts or these experiences with patients, and I'd have maybe 2 or 3 days off, and I'd knock out a painting, and then I'd go right back to it. That went on for many years,
and I ended up getting my
master's in nursing informatics, which big data had started to come out.
And then I started my PhD at Penn, and as a clinical mortality specialist and specialized in mortality data. I looked at a lot of dead charts, people who had died, and a lot of their information. And trying to advance here, but it won't advance. There you go.
Yeah, I went to
PAFA, and in 2017 I left nursing. And I decided to go full-time for my master's. And this is what my work looked like at the time. I was doing a lot of work on paper and drawing. And I used a lot of text. And I had these, they kind of reminded me of video games. There was this upstairs and downstairs action. And of course, there was a lot of references to the body and blood. It reminds me of this video game called Pitfall, which is like ancient from Atari, but there was this upstairs and downstairs kind of action, and you would swing over these holes. But then I told you about these performative acts that I would do, and these were the ones that I didn't know what to do with. And they were related specifically to my practice in nursing. So I thought, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing with these things. Let me go to grad school to figure out what to do with my performative acts. So I rolled into grad school in this first semester, and I make this movie where I basically draw my own blood. And I show it during crit, and people were like, whoa. And it just went over very poorly. But really, I was just coming from a nursing standpoint, and
I was trying to explain that I couldn't donate blood because I'm gay, and at the time you were not allowed to donate blood. So I was using my own agency and drawing my own blood and making a performance out of it. So again, the class kind of freaked out, and it actually freaked me out too, because I said, "What am I doing here? I have all this angst," and people brought it to my attention. So I took this class to figure out what to do with these performative acts. I took a video class. And it was with a professor named David Dempy Wolf, if anybody's local and they know him. He's a pretty good guy. He's a video guy. He's a big skateboarder too in Philly. And he introduced me to a program called Modulate. And Modulate is a program used by VJs, or like someone who's with the DJ, and they do the lights and the kind of video stuff. But you could also use it for concerts or ballets and these types of venues. But what happened was, I had never played around with light like this. So the first night I set up in this room, and I make this ball, and the ball that you see down there was a drawing that I made. I scanned the drawing and then, with the program Modulate, I created the sphere out of my drawing, and I projected it kind of floating in the air there, and I was like, what is going on over there? What is that? And my impulse was to try to touch it. And from that night on, I was completely seduced by light. And I would just spend all of my time in this giant room we have there at PAFA doing these projections. I discovered light. And David Dempy Wolf, the bottom right is the first video I made. And the professor at the end of the video, he's like, wow, I haven't seen joy like that in a while. And it resonated with me because, as I said, I was drawing my blood and I was angry and I was this activist kind of artist, social practice. But then as I started making these beautiful little videos and then forming them into shapes and fitting them in the room, and that sensation of trying to touch the ball, and then it became this kinetic haptic thing where I felt like I could move them, and that's where the performance came in. I was doing large rooms, immersive type projections. And again, the video, I apologize for the lag. I'm also greedy with videos, so I like to max out the slide capability. As you'll see, I have this one slide, it has like 100 videos in it. So I was introduced to the programs that we all might use, such as Premiere, the Adobe Suite, After Effects, and I never really used those things. And I learned how to make up a video. Here's more examples where I would just create these kind of these spheres, and I would just leave them going, and people would just walk into the room and they'd instantly have the impulse to go play. And these spaces became fun. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those immersion places. There's one in New York, it's Arctech House, or Wonder World in Philly, I think, is one of these places. And it's kind of the first thing that I felt when I started working with projection, was this immersion type thing. And the performative acts went really well with that, because I could create a scenario with the light and the videos and the photographs that I used and projected them, and I hadn't learned how to map yet. And then I would do my thing in there, and it would yield great video, great colors, and I would do these things in these rooms. So here's, again, I have a huge performative slant, and unfortunately this isn't going to work, but I do these actions and I record them and I remix the video. What I just mentioned, that was the most important thing to my practice that was ever brought to my attention, was that any of these assets that I make or create, a photograph that I take, a video, a 15-second video that I knocked out for class, or even for myself in the morning, a professor said to me, he's like, yo, those are yours, and like forever you can playfully remix them, and tell different stories with them. And that really resonated with me. So I'm quick to make a video out of anything and then come back and then reconfigure a story.
And this particular piece is called cazando, hunting, and it's funny. I relate it to my life. I've been married twice, and the first the I only caught the chair twice. I only lasted the chair twice out of 50 attempts, and I was like, all right, this is great. This is about like looking for desire or trying to find love, and represented through a dirty chair, and and lassoing it with a red rope. I have an affinity for red and ropes too. So the performances yield videos, and I didn't know what to do with them. So it's like documentation of these performances. But what I started to notice was that in these environments with the projection, the stills were gorgeous. I'm like looking at one of the stills of me just lassoing in this like field of stars, and I was like, these are great, but I still don't know what to do with them at this point. And this was the first year of grad school. It's kind of like the second semester. I started thinking a lot about the cloud, and we were heading towards the end of the first semester. And I was tired of projecting in rooms and in spaces, and people said, "Oh, you're queering architecture. You're altering the spaces." And I had a desire to focus in the projections, and I wanted to create. I guess it was a prop at the time, and I didn't know what it was, and it was this cloud, and I would do these projections, these performative acts. One night I'm in my studio, and I do this thing down below, and it brings to mind being in a forge. And this one does have sound. It has a sound of like a hammer, kind of like happening in a forge. And I started to think of this entity, a cloud bearer, like an entity which makes these clouds where we store our data in. We're always sending stuff up to the cloud. And I'm a big fan of mythology, and that's one of the things in my work. So that night, so to speak, in this forge in my studio, this cloud bearer concept came to life, and I created, the quickest thing I could do was create this like cardboard thing, and I started projecting on it, and I started thinking about the cloud. The school year was coming to an end. I had discovered this new part of my practice, and I was really excited, and I was thinking a lot about this cloud, and the opportunity to show it in the museum was brought to me. This curator was like, "Yo, what are you doing? I like that. You want to put it in the show?" And I'm in the museum trying to project on the wall, and the guy that works in the museum is very upset because video, is like splashing on the walls, and he didn't want it to get on the paintings and things like that. So I just kind of angled it up in frustration. And right at that moment, the curator walks by, and he goes, "Yo, I like that." And I was like, done. We're showing it video on the ceiling of the museum. And this particular video that I made is called I Pray the Cloud My Soul to Keep. And it's a 13-minute assault on your senses. It's too much, even for me. I'm like, there's an artist called Ryan Trecarton. And if you've ever seen any of his video performances, you'll understand what I mean. It's just cacophony. But the purpose of the film, I Pray the Cloud My Soul to Keep, is it goes through the 7 days of the week, and I realized that the everyday is very present in my work. And what I mean by that is anything that I go through my day and I'm taking a picture, or I'm always making a drawing, anything that I do during the day, I mediate it. I make film out of it, or a drawing or something, and I would send it up to the cloud. And so the film was based, anything I made, I just jammed it in there. So Monday, and you would kind of experience Monday, and it builds up towards the end of the week, and it's all framed within that cloud. And again, I sent it up, and it's stored somewhere in the cloud. So it was really in my head. I started mythologizing it and thinking about like, wow, what if I lost my data? And there I started equivocating one's soul to the cloud, because it kind of stores all your experiences. And I started building this mythology. I was very beholden to Greek mythology all my life. All I wanted to do was go to Greece. Oh my God, I know like every story. I ended up marrying a Greek guy, and I got to go to Greece. So this was my second time, 2018. I was in grad school. I was stoked. I was going with school, and we were going for 5 weeks to Mycenae, the ancient world, where it turns out that someone in my class, and I know I'm on Zoom, but her father discovered Agamemnon's throne, and that was mind-blowing. And so we had the opportunity to go spend time at the archaeological dig in Mycenae, the ancient world. And so we spent a lot of time there. And the reason I bring it up is because, and it's going to be Lag City, it was a huge influence for me, this trip. Remember the cardboard cloud thing that I made? I get to Athens and I'm standing on a balcony and I'm looking at the quarry from where the Pentile marbles were taken from, and that's the marbles that England ended up with, and they were in the top part of the Parthenon. That shape across Athens is the freaking shape of my cloud. And I was like, welcome to Greece. This is going to be great. And unfortunately, you can't see the video, but it's called Athenian Amble, and it's my everyday walks through Greece, and I toggle it together into a story. Sinepho means cloud. So that's how I walk into Greece, and I'm like, this is going to be great. I get this Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun, his wings melt and he falls down to the earth. I am inspired in Greece, and I start doing these photographs where, I jump up into the air and I catch that moment, and we're traveling throughout the ancient world. And so it's me taking pictures everywhere and I'm having a good time. This one, I love this photograph. It's called Te dejo por el sol, I leave you for the sun. And it's kind of the feeling I had at the end of the trip after being there for 5 weeks with school people. And I was just like ready to go home. And my husband was coming. We were going to go to Crete. And I'd never been to Crete. And I was like excited because there was like 2 more weeks for the trip. So I said, let me go. I love that freaking quarry back there, I was like, let me go on the roof deck, go back to Athens. I'm at Aunt Betty's house. Hi, Aunt Betty. And I go on the roof deck because I want to take that one shot, and I see the quarry there. I jump up, and guess what? Boop! I fell off the roof deck a whole floor and shattered my right calcaneus. I'm a nurse. I knew I was in trouble, and I'm on a roof deck, like I'm on the landing of someone else's apartment. Oh, it was a tragedy. So I called my husband and I'm like, guess what? I have to go to the trauma hospital. And yeah, man, I shattered my calcaneus and I refused surgery. I'm a nurse. I was like, no, I'm in a foreign country. No one spoke a stitch of English. I tried Spanish, nobody. I tried French. I spent a lot of time with the MRI. And because I'm a visual person, I was enamored with it frame by frame. Plus, I come from nursing and from the hospital. I was like, yo, this is amazing. This MRI, it got into me, and it altered my practice, because those shapes that you see, they've bled into everything I make. So I started making paintings. And so my paintings were never more quiet. I'm a maximalist, and I usually fill the whole thing up. But these were the silhouette of the bone as the MRI scans through. I could see, like, these rings, and then the meaning was in the marrow. It was the stuff that I would put inside these paintings that gave them meaning to me. And the semester ends and I go home and I'm just sitting there in my studio, and I build this little thing. And it was that program that I had mentioned earlier, Modulate. I had to create with this artist. His name's Jacoby Satterwhite, and he's an amazing performer as well as an amazing video artist. And he said to me, yo, every semester or every year that you're in school, like, you need to skill up. So, like, don't come back here unless you skilled up on something. And I was like, oh crap, I take the challenge. So I go home over break, and I'm playing with Modulate. Modulate is a company called Garage Cube, sorry. And they have another program, and it's called Mad Mapper. I hadn't learned mapping yet, and mapping is where you do projection, you do video projection, but you fit the projections onto shapes and forms. Like when you're at a concert and the person's singing and the two things on the side are like volcanoes and all this crazy stuff is happening, there's a mapper there. Somebody's sitting at a table with computers and they're fitting all that stuff in and they're putting all those assets for the band up there. Well, I was like, well, I want to figure that out. So on the left, I built a little maquette, and then on the right, I mapped it, and I tried to fit everything as perfectly as I could. And if you look, this crap is like provisional. It's paper, tape. I was like, whatever, I don't care. Let's just make it. And then the beauty really is in the mapping, and then I could animate it, and it was like the what you see is a photograph of a balcony or a rooftop across from Aunt Betty's house in Athens. And then I showed you, I hung those little clouds out of paper, and then I just started mapping other videos and animations I created onto it. And this was a pivotal point in my career. Not even school. This has changed completely my practice. So again, on the left, on the upper part, you see my studio. I had a closet at half, had like a storage closet with no windows. And they're like, oh, sorry. And I was like, no worries, I'm a projectionist. This is gonna work out really well. But I had a long, deep well like that. And I would put my sculptures and my setup, and then I could map the videos and animations and photographs that I had already collected from Greece and retell these stories. And so, this one I had a sense of. On the right side was more like the body, and it was more red and visceral. And on the left side, it was more atmospheric, and there were more like things hanging and dangling on that side. So I started thinking again about saving stuff in the cloud, and the cloud is your soul. And this is how I pray that the cloud, my soul to keep, was born. That was the one, it really changed my practice. We had studio visits, people were coming in. It's seductive. You can't figure out what's going on sometimes. It's confusing. I love it so much. So, all right, what happens? I also made a video, and it's not going to play, unfortunately, but it's about 8 minutes long. And this is that same semester. I'm creating this mythology still, this cloud bearer, and I'll try, but I don't think it's going to work. All right, now we're getting close to the end of school. That stuff that I showed you before, the stuff in my studio, here's the problem. I could create the most insane environment. You could be like walking on a field of stars while your hair was on fire, and there would be these amazing objects floating in the room. But what I couldn't do was I couldn't get out of my studio. Like I'd be like, yo, come to my studio, check this out. But I couldn't figure out like how to get this out. Like, how do you show this? I figured it out. There's an artist, his name's Tony Ausler. Tony Ausler is like in my book, he's way up there. He's an old punk rocker. He used to hang out with like Sonic Youth, Kim Gordon, and all these people, but he was a projectionist. And he had a friend, Mike Kelly. They were from California. They went to Cal Arts. He's a projectionist, and he did a piece a couple years ago where he projected into the Hudson River. I'm on Instagram. Sorry, a lot of visual artists are. There's really no place better, in my opinion. You can go on TikTok, whatever. But through Instagram, I slip into Tony's DM, and I was like, "Hey, Tony." I was like, and this guy's not gonna talk to me or whatever. I was like, "Hey, man, I need help. I can't figure out how to get these things out of my studio." I'm like asking like a major artist, right? He didn't reply. So one night I come home late from the studio, and I admit that I had a little bit of whiskey, and I'm making a hot dog in the microwave, right? and I'm watching that hot dog spin around the freaking microwave, and I'm filming it because I'm a video guy. And I send the video to Tony. I'm like, hey, Tony, I'm a wiener. Just ignore my request. He answered, and he was like, show me the work. Show me what it is. I want to see it. Send me your website. This is like a famous artist. So I did. And he's like, you want me to ask my editor? And I was like this, like doe in the headlights, but really on the other side of the DM. And I said no. But just that conversation with him was the win that I needed. It was what I needed, and guess what? I got it out. I figured it out. And at the end of the semester, I make this big bone. It's based on the MRI of my right foot, and I'm hobbling all over campus. I don't even care. But I get to the finish line. It's the annual student exhibition, and I knock this bone out, and I map it, and there it's perfect. It's in the museum. I got a great spot. And I come in the day before the show, and the cleaning people have bumped my projector, and I had to start all over again. But that's not what the thing is. The point is, I got it out of the studio, and again, that was a game changer, because now I could go anywhere and like not have to have my computer doing this live thing there. I figured out how to like leave it there and how to fit it onto forms perfectly. Meaning is in the marrow. I mentioned that before. I had these bones, and I'd really been searching for the shape. And a critic named, I can't remember his first name, but Cohen was his last name. And he came in and he said about my sculptures, he called them props. And I got really offended at the time, but guess what? They were props. They really were. They hadn't become sculptures yet. Now, at the end, this here, meaning is in the marrow, I found the form, and they became sculptures. I found the form that could receive the videos and the animations that I would create. Instead of rely on a wall or like a tree or something, it was mine. And so I got my first solo right out of grad school, which was really super. And this piece is called The Pathway to Wellbeing. And Tony slips into my DM, and he calls it a Rube Goldberg, which is like this machine that just kind of just does nothing except cycle around like a game called Mousetrap. And I took that as a compliment. These things move around, and again, my video is not gonna work well. On the left is the installation, and what I learned from this was people would ask me, they're like, what can I buy, or what do I get? And I'm like, a video. And they're like, do you come to my house and set this up? I really didn't know still, but what I did know was on the right that the stills were delicious. The stills were like, oh my God, yeah, like, can we get this blown up? This is great. So I had something to share from the videos. I've come a long way since then, and I figured out what to do with the videos. Using Modulate and MadMapper, I would map the spaces and the sculptures, drag the video into Premiere, make it a thing, put it in a media player, and it fits perfectly. I could go home and not worry. Then I got into residency. Oh my goodness, what? I didn't know there were art residencies until I went to art school. I was in the healthcare world. Excuse me. So I applied to this residency with SAIC project. It's kind of this, I like the work that they showed there. It's in upstate New York, 2 hours north of the city. And I got in. And I got in for winter. And I got in for November. I went. What an amazing experience. One of my friends from grad school got in. I was supposed to be there for a month. I ended up staying there till January. I got a job out of it, a gig. Like someone wanted me to come to like this thing in New York and like do their party. And I was put in the show. And it was the first time that I had ever been given kind of carte blanche. They're like, oh yeah, we know you, Joe. You've proven yourself, kind of like, what do you want to do? And I just quick mentioned, oh, I'm just gonna, do the 5th floor of the Maxon Mill. It's a 5-story, 7-story mill in Wasaic. It was an old grain mill. So the time I was there, I built more of the bones. I built them out of wood, and then I skinned them in surgical plaster, what we use in the hospital just to make casts. And then I suspend them in surgical netting. And then I created on the 5th floor, I think the ceiling is probably like 20 feet. And one section of the building, I did the whole 5th floor. It's like thousands of square feet. And I had never done something so large. And it moves, but it doesn't, you can't tell here, but it's animated. It was supposed to be up from January until March. Wait, was it January, March? And COVID happened. So my installation was from January until September, and it lasted. It didn't move. It was perfect. One day it was snowing in there. I was like, wow, I've seen it all now. This was, I feel you in my bones. And it was the first time I had done something kind of site specific, and I'm not, I wasn't into site specificity, but I engaged the history of the mill and I incorporated it into my installation. It was the first time I'd ever done that. All right, so why do I have this here? I become bone. We're here now. This is how I got here, right? So how the piece that's in the, and I'm about to wrap it up soon, but the piece that is in the gallery is a remix of 2 things that I've done before. One was Meaning is in the Marrow, and then the other one is I Become Bone, and that was a performance that I did where I put myself in the surgical netting, and I, essentially I became one of my sculptures, and I revel. Like, I just imagine myself as one of those sculptures, and the way the lights played on my body, and there's music playing, and I become bone. It's something that happens with a lot of artists. Sometimes you become like, you don't become your motif clearly, but you really live that thing, and it's ever present. And my desire was to be the thing that I make. So I tapped into that feeling, and that's these 2, the piece from before and this piece. And what I did was I came here and I mixed them up and recreated them in another space. The piece Meaning is in the Marrow, I usually use 4 movements. I try to do 3 or 4 things. And what I did with Meaning is in the Marrow is I chose the elements, and they cycle. The bone is a reference for the body or a reference for myself. And it looks funny because this is the film, but it literally is projected on the sculpture, and this video floats in space. If you pass by the gallery, it's a perfect example. So we're looking at the video, but it's what is projected on the sculpture. And it cycles through the elements. The bone changes. When you see an eye in my piece, it's a shout out to Tony Ausler. One of his most famous pieces is big white, like plaster ball, and he has just an eye on it. A lot of his work is about surveillance and this type of stuff. It's probably hard to see, but these adornments on the bone, they are of the MRI, cycling through the bone, shifting. All right, so like I said, performance, man. And you know what, like, I've seen it with a lot of my installations, people, the desires to get up in it. They just, they run in and people are like, selfie, selfie. I get it. I live it. The light, it feels good on my body. It's like photons. I can feel the pressure sometimes. And it's like adornment. It's a way of painting my body. So I create these spaces. I light these spaces up, and then I do stuff in them. And my husband unfortunately has to witness some of this stuff. Like, I'll be in a shining suit, crawling on the floor. My husband will like come downstairs and be like, this is what I'm doing. It's called performance art. I take the performance and then I change it. So on the left, you could see it's just one still, and you can see the body is split into 4 and doubled. There's a lot of doubling in my work as well, and there's a reference for that. Without going too deep into it, the story goes that my mom had twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and I consumed my other twin, like I'm the alpha. It's a syndrome that happens. So the only answer I could come up with doubling in my work is that my other twin, it's like a shout out somehow. Totally subconscious, but that's what I'm attributing to. Transformation, a lot of it in my work, and that's what I showed you. I do the performance, and then I transform them into animations and videos or remixes. Because I feel like sometimes watching a performance to me sometimes can be pretty boring if it's not engaging or too long or something like that. So I like to remix things like that. So I'm just bringing you back to, here I am, I'm over there in Hicks. I come into a space, I bring my sculpture, and the way my process works is I place the piece, and then I start moving around with the projector. I find the right throw with my projector, and then I start fitting the forms and the videos onto the sculptures. And then in the end, it's the lower right. The piece is floating. Remember I mentioned that the piece was floating? It wasn't actually just this flat screen. You can see there the dimensionality of it. And then, the top is the video from Hicks, without any of the map of the actual room, but the stills, again, the stills that you get from these, I make 4K HD videos. The stills are what I find amazing, and the stills are the takeaway for others. If you're a videographer, or you have animation or 3D, any of that work, any of that computer work, your stills, because people still are like, oh, it's NFT, what do I do with it, or whatever. Like, zip it, print this out and put it on your wall. Or, people are just getting to figure out what to do with an MP4, like a file. The stills are amazing. And what I figured out now is I edition the film. So just like a printmaker sells an artist proof and 6 prints of their piece, I have an artist proof of my film. I try to keep that for myself, and I'll make 2 editions that are available for purchase or for collection. And then I'll make an edition of the prints from the stills. I'll make a selection of 4 generally, and I'll print out a series of like 5, a limited edition of prints. And this way, if you don't want to purchase a film, you can purchase or collect one of the stills. But I'll be honest, if you're smart, you'll collect a video, because my 3-minute video has 17,643 stills. So go ahead and buy one when you could just buy the movie and press pause. So that's the secret there for you guys collectors to be. Thank you. What we'll do now is we can head over to the gallery, but if anyone has questions, I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you. And those are my QRs for my website, and for my Instagram, if you want to just like take a snap, can take you there. The picture that you see it turns out that I have projected before. You're never far from who you are. Whatever, I'm 900 years old. This was from high school. We were at my friend Terry's house, and somebody had taken a projector from the art supply store. And I was freaking projecting my Polaroids on myself. So like fast forward 600 years, I'm back at it. And so pay attention to your practice. There's something there that you did in high school that's gonna come out in your work, and you're gonna know it. So thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has any questions, let me know and bring you the mic so everyone on Zoom can hear you. I'll ask a question. So you are actually a statement. So Joseph's also been very busy. He's in a show tomorrow.
Yes.
A show at the National History Museum. The
National
show is called Truth. So if you're in Philly down there, that piece is there, and then he has a solo show at Papa that opens on the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So if you're also in there at Papa, you see a larger body of work, which is, I think it's quite different than what's here. And so it's a good opportunity if you're down in Philly. And I just had a question about what's next.
You know, that's a really good question. What's next? I've been building my business up, and it's something that I've done. I don't know if this is the right word. Loathingly.
Not with
Not with enthusiasm. Because my dream was, to graduate and get picked up by a gallery and just, do this like 24/7, what I like. But I didn't want to go back. I retired from nursing. I did it. I took care. But At was saved, and then there's this artist, Ezekiel Mohammed. You should check out his work. He's blowing up so huge right now. And Ezekiel's sitting next to me, and he leans in, and he's like, "Yo, man, you need to like do your projections at nightclubs. It's like DJ for the Chinese mafia in New York. And you should go throw some light." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to like. That just sounds like sure, invite me or whatever." But what I figured out was I could do events, and I did my first event this summer. Bar hired me, and I projected on not one building, but 2 buildings. And I put a video on the back of their thing, and they're like, "Wow, this is amazing!" And I got paid for it, and I got paid for it. So this museum, National Liberty Museum, they put me in a show there. They're like, "Hey, you want to do like one of our events?" Yeah. So what's next is October. I'm going to do an event for National Liberty Museum. But I've been working so hard for my museum solo in 2 weeks, and the other museum show that I'm probably going to take a couple months off. And then it's residency application time. So.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, you can ask Joseph questions personally. If you want to join us over in the gallery, we'll have some refreshments over there, and you can spend some time in the gallery as well. There's some of the pieces take some more time than at first glance, but you're welcome to enjoy them at your leisure. All right. I'll see you over there, and give me a minute to get the food ready.
Thank you again.